Welcome everyone to another full stack and low level Linux development live stream. After our most successful 2 decades in the making T2 Linux release recently supporting 25 architectures, of course we are busy not only with the microkernel, also updating stuff to the latest and greatest. Obviously, and I noticed already some week ago, but there's only so much I can do, that GCC, the latest GCC, kept failing for me building Go. Also at one time ADA, but somehow ADA currently works. But so Go, right? You would expect, and this is basically a short summary, I've done the work already. And so the error are actually relatively obscure, kind of sort of, and there are different things to learn here. So the error should have been as following here. So various libgo stuff, if you're building support for this Google Go language stuff, or previous video, right? No, can never have too many languages. How many are enough? 100 competing languages. Yeah, the more the merrier, the more the better, and the more standards, whatever. Anyway, so every single freaking GCC build, right? Of all the complexity, right? GCC is so much, and libraries, libatomic, and various other stuff. And everything builds but Go not. It's like, what the heck are they smoking, right? Reference to undefined name. There's also other stuff like error reference to undefined name. Load in 32. It's like, oh, dude, what are those people doing, right? And so you scroll around a little bit, and it's like, yeah, dude, what's going on there? I looked at the code. The code actually looked somewhat decent. And the questions are why is that not? Because that also works. That is part of GCC. Why not use it if it's there, right? And what I want to tell you here is general attention to detail and stuff. So normally you would look at the code looks fine, you're wondering why it's not there, right? You scroll a little bit around, everything looks so far okay, until you accidentally scroll a little bit more, like really, I mean, yeah, I epic thread rip that, right? So there are 32 concurrent, also, yeah, parallelism, right? The more you epic thread rip, faster recurring theme, right? Actually, probably I should, you know what, one short note here before I continue this. Shout out, clean up, Epic, because we are ready to print some merch. With 10,000 subscribers, it's time for merch. Something like Epic, fine-tuning later, Epic, thread ripping faster to build arrows or whatever, something like that, fine-tuning later. That's not the point of this video. So only by pure chance, I happened to scroll a little bit around, and it's like, dude, what is that here? Did you catch that? libgo match shell 114.1 not found, ARM64. Wait a second. That looks a little bit suspicious, right? I was like, dude, what the freaking heck is going on there, right? So recurring theme, right? 2022 build errors or build systems. So like CMake, Meson, Ninja, did I say CMake? What else? Gem, and what else? You get the idea, cargo. And it's like, yeah, dude, 2022, the people still use various kinds of shell helpers. And so the only reason that doesn't work is, for me, obviously, has 20 years of experience, although probably you only need like a year or two of compiling some stuff experience nowadays. It's like, yeah, bin shell, right? And yeah, sure enough it is. So the only reason like Go failed for me is previously that was hidden, because previously I was using my somewhere here, it doesn't matter, my portable Rodware SSD. So the only reason, because it is an older install 5 years ago, that has been sh equals bash, which it was for Rock Linux NT2, here our tiny little Linux distribution, for 20 years. And only recently, I know and we are not even the first, right? You say, so why do you shoot yourself into the foot with bin sh, bin shell, something else? And not only such kind of testing, so basically I intentionally like testing, the more testing, right? But also performance, right? Hear me out, because we epic thread rip 25 architecture combinations that each takes 2.5 hours on a Ryzen 5950X. Also, share, like, and subscribe. We soon will upgrade to the latest AM5, obviously, for hopefully a little bit more epic thread ripping. So this serialized configure stuff are the biggest waste of time that are holding up my builds, right? So every percent of all those 300, 400 packages we can squeeze of that, I take for free, because that is money I don't need to spend on epic thread rippers. I don't need to spend on overclocking and stuff and faster memory or more memory. And yeah, so I think previous video 2 years ago, I benchmarked that. I think Dash, so we use Dash, and which ironically, we're not the first distribution. I think some people like Debian did that first or stuff. And I was always wondering, yeah, like asking yourself for trouble, right? So I benchmarked that, and obviously 11% performance. It's basically you upgrade an Intel box to an AMD box, right? 11% performance stuff. So I obviously took that, but this is also, yeah, for that we get such, we have a couple of other things. We need to patch a couple of other packages because, yeah. So what do you normally do? You can, of course, tweak the shell script of not using Bashism there or whatever GNU extension or other stuff. You could patch Dash, but both things, of course, a little bit error prone. What I usually do is, of course, not wasting even more time than necessary. So we have now a hotfix sh, and so even this hotfix took longer than I wanted. Because what did I do? All right, initially I patched even, I probably still have this patch here. I think I still have it disabled. So initially I patched this so even that took me 5 build attempts, right? So I basically wasted 1 hour, of course, with a conference call and sipping on some coffee. 5 builds, epic, basically wasting 1 hour of precious electrons. Because obviously first I patched libgo match like you would like do, but that resulted in the same build errors. And I thought maybe some other scripts too. Let's better like just patch all. That also didn't have. Then I looked closer. It's like, yeah, bonus pro tip: attention to detail and always look closely. Because if you don't, also wait a second, is that the right? It could be the right. Because so that were already like 2 builds, right? Sure, I continued asking emails. I continued management and stuff, but yeah, 2 builds, that's probably like 10-15 minutes of wasted time. Because if we look closely here, which is basically a summary, is usually I live stream this for 1 hour and sit here and it's like, what the freaking heck are they thinking? It's basically a quick summary. You notice here, and it's also a pro tip to you and kind of myself, where's even this match? It's epic parallelized here. Yeah, so they run this here from the make file, as you see here. The make rules include, also yeah, 2022, you run stuff with binsh. Probably there are super good reasons. I don't know one of really the top of my head. Maybe tempfs or other no exec stuff of workarounding, potentially, not sure. But yeah, so much to 2 builds wasted for that. And then the next patch, then I patched, of course, the make file. This stuff relatively complex. Also, this is crazy, right? Not only we have 20, or probably with all the crazy like Java, Maven and whatnot, and ARN and so on, there are probably like 100 easily. I mean, even with all custom craziness, probably 10,000 build systems, but realistically, like let's say 20 major and 100 crazy alternative build systems. And in 2022, not only we waste our time with such nonsense here, we even YOLO this shell scripting stuff in between make and other build systems. And yeah, it's error prone, right? It's also mixing technologies. Sure, shell scripting like ONT2 is a relatively easy technology kind of thing. But also it's not very tightly integrated, right? It's like everything YOLO together of like, we can't easily do that in our build system. So let's jerry rig some redneck engineer, some shell scripts in between. And so next I patched, so the thing is configure is testing, bin bash and whatever. So you could spend even more time, right? Why do I even make such a fuss of this video about this? Because this is just so crazy complex. You could, so what do you do now, right? So the configure script is testing stuff. We can even I'll show you that. I have that here somewhere. Also I use actually leth for that. So that would be GCC libgo, maybe here in configure of shell test. It should probably be in here. Shell equals, yeah, config shell. It's like, where do you start patching, right? Config shell is required of other stuff. Shell equals config shell. It's like, yeah, sure, you could patch any other thing, but fun fact, if we would, I mean, what do you want to patch here, right? Detect if you run dash or whatever of like testing. It's also so craziness, right? It has freaking configure checks, but they're basically completely useless, right? I mean, do they even test you? I don't know. Test the shell built-in probably is, maximum length of like, yeah, whatever. So you could patch the configure, which is of course waste of time, because even so I said like YOLO this shit. Let me just patch the bloody configure of libgo. Everything else appears to probably, I didn't see any build marginality. Everything else of GCC like knock on kinder plastic laminated wood. Because if we would have patched configure, it still wouldn't have worked, because initially I patched the shell equals thing here to bin bash without the override. So that was the next wasted build, right? It's like, yeah, 20 years of experience and you need 4 or 5, probably easily 5 maybe, build attempts to finally build this stuff, because just writing here shell as it was equals bin bash didn't help, because most likely it's called from the top level makefile already with shell exported, right? So probably the top level configure we actually could test, but it doesn't really matter. It didn't work, so it must have been already somewhere exported, probably. Also, yeah, configure stuff, right? Testing what was already previously tested in all the sub modules of like testing, the more testing, the double, triple, and probably 10, 20 times testing the same stuff. Wouldn't surprise me, if we, it's like, yeah, obviously it's set from the top level configure and makefile already. So it's like, yeah, even that patching shell equals bin bash, it's like, dude, why does it still not work? Like, okay, let's one last quick guess. Let's overwrite this, and yeah, sure enough with that. It's super dirty. So what does it do? Makefiles have this, at least GNU makefiles. Not sure if that is a standard makefile. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What that means is if it's already set previously with environment variables, because there are of course like a handful of ways where you can set make stuff. Also, yeah, common beginner's mistake, you build something and you inherit something from the environment, because there's also various things of environment or command line, so you can set all the stuff in various ways, and some stuff has higher priorities than others. But yeah, fun fact, override shell equals bin bash like fixes that good enough for me, because I mean, what else? What do you want to do, right? You configure, you check. Sure, theoretically you could. Maybe the very best solution would be to patch this stupid Go helper shell script stuff of it's there matching the if Dragonfly BSD, if AIX and whatnot. Also, yeah, 2022, right? You need configure, make files, shell stuff, and freaking libtool, right? Just to build some generic binary executables, right? The complexity is crazy and endless, kind of, sort of. So yeah, that's basically the summary. With that patch it builds. That is certainly a rather nice thing to have, that your GCC fully builds. And this is basically testing, and more testing, recurring pro tip here, because previously it should probably, do I have that maybe? I mean, not that you would not know how a SSD, actually it's not even here. Where's my freaking SSD? Need to actually check. I had seen it the other hour. But anyway, so as I always build from the same good old portable Road Warrior SSD install, I hope I have the SSD somewhere with me. Then, yeah, you don't test new stuff. So basically this is not only testing and more testing, it's also the T2 default, right? So much to dog footing our own stuff here, although I hate this term, because it sounds disgusting, and although maybe dog food is good. And so yeah, basically, because I build with in the meantime, probably, yeah, T2 is so amazing, I rolling released my own stuff for 5 years. But on the other hand, I don't test the latest and greatest, which is obviously, this is just the URL of this live stream, nothing like recursively URLing your own live stream. Yeah, so people playing along at home would have had this build error, while I do not, so that is certainly a win. And actually, wait a second, that also means that I wasted quite a bit of performance, because previously, that means maybe this epic thread rips a little bit faster on this change root on this server container, because bin dash gives this 11 or so percent faster configure performance. So yeah, happy about that fix, but that is so crazy, right? I thought, when I looked at this, it's like, dude, that will be a nightmare to debug. I mean, who wants to debug those bloody libgo libraries in there? And at the end, it was the most trivial stuff, but also a recurring reminder that what I always say here, right? Our foundations of IT are not only buggy and peak bugs, but also are built on a foundation of glued together YOLO and redneck jerry-rig engineering of just sometimes accidentally compiling stuff of, yeah. Somehow I would still recommend stuff needs to be simpler, more minimal, less complex, and somehow build systems, sure, there are already other build systems, but make us, of course, a little bit cryptic, and as we see, you're not supporting as much exotic boundary conditions that some people need for building their exotic languages. But it's also crazy. I also, last but not least, right, I should say, it is crazy that nobody maybe fixed it. I wonder what the Debian people or other have in there, maybe other distributions. I heard there might be another Linux distribution. I mean, I rarely use, I think the last Linux distribution I used was 1998, so not sure if there are other Linux distributions, but some say there are 1900 something. I wonder if others also YOLO patch builds that with shell equals bin bash or who knows what. Maybe actually overwriting that on the command line could potentially, but the problem is if that we could only do that globally, and then we would lose 11% performance boost. And as you've seen how much configure bloat runs with GCC and other stuff, you certainly want 11 because and that's super long, right? Some packages like LVM2 and others even configure longer than the handful of, like they have like 10 or 20 C files and they epic thread rip like 32 job parallel in let's say 5 seconds, and it configures for like 20 seconds or so. Of course GCC builds long enough, but yeah, I would not be surprised if, although it somewhat runs concurrently, but yeah, anyway, we of course take any 11% wherever they are hiding and accumulating with pleasure. But I'm really surprised that there's not a more generic solution. I would think other major people of code sorcery or were not use Debian or Ubuntu, and once upon a time I heard they might default to bin dash, but maybe that is already outdated. Maybe they already, I think once it was in the news, I remember a year or two it was in the news, they want to revert back to bin bash or something for such kind of compatibility, but I'm not really following other distributions obviously too much because everything just works in T2, just raw working T2 Linux obviously. So yeah, hot fix GCC libgo for bin not bash, I guess, something. Yeah, another crazy thing that again wasted 1 hour of my life because, well, 1 hour with meeting and phone call, and but you guessed it right. So that is certainly a nice find with that GCC builds fully again. And so this build is, I think this build is, except, yeah, I'm wondering previous video what I do with this stupid Xorg drivers, or not drivers. I mean, this amazing vintage and retro drivers. I noticed the NetBSD people of, you heard, there might not only be another Linux distribution than T2 there. I also heard there are some other operating systems that are called BSD allegedly. And so NetBSD turns out they must use some kind of older version or other stuff. Because not only does NetBSD have accelerated patches, also so much to upstream, right? So the NetBSD people have hardware accelerated stuff for a couple of Sun drivers, like what we recently used, Sun TCX and Sun CG6, which I have in my Spark Station previous video. And so I guess they just use another Xorg server or stuff. So I also wonder, I mean, yeah, we will soon really do microkernel, obviously, for so many reasons. But I mean, not only did the NetBSD people not send this upstream, which, yeah, it's also, so they still have some stuff, they have EXA, so this acceleration, EXA they can only have with a pretty old Xorg server. Not EXA, XAA of course. Although it wouldn't surprise me if they soon follow suit and remove EXA. So yeah, 2012. So that was already a decade ago. Super, super long time. That is extremely disappointing. It hasn't even worked over 4 years. I would be surprised. I'm not even... Anyway, but I wonder what's the NetBSD. Do the NetBSD people really run that old Xbox server, which is also kind of crazy, but... And maybe I do nothing. It's more important for me to write a microkernel and welcome everyone. And basically a new graphic subsystem, because I cannot throw so much of my lifetime to supporting vintage and retro for other people to just delete it constantly. The only question is if we unbreak a couple of drivers, but even that, like maybe SIS or Trident or Glint or so, with this RAMDEC stuff. So potentially it could be relatively easy, just another hour or two of my time, to revert, like have NT2 a medium-sized patch of restoring this CRT library and headers for those Xbox server drivers to use. The only other option would be to move those RAMDEC stuff to those drivers, and I don't really feel like touching those driver code. It would also be duplicating. So instead of doing that once for the Xbox server, you do this like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, but I'm probably microkernel, right? So yeah, welcome everyone. Let's take a quick look at the comments. And also, by the way, so NT2's next ISOs will build with significantly improved hardened binary executables, fully built with position independent executables, and what was the other? Stack smashing protector, and maybe then even later. So basically, also not only know that we have everything up to date and everything just freaking working TM. Let's break it again, right, with improved security features. However, I will not spend any minute. It already takes too long, right, or long enough of hours of test building and patching, and I will not spend any minute on fixing other architectures like Spark or stuff. If any one of those don't build or don't work with those options enabled, I will simply not build those ISOs. So like whatever might break, like Motorola 68K or other stuff, if it doesn't build with all of this, the ISOs will not have it, right? But otherwise, x86, maybe even we look into other stuff. I probably also want to share, like, and subscribe. I will probably benchmark this stuff soon to have a better understanding how much performance we lose with building everything position independent code and a stack smashing protector. And also, actually, I think I added that to the to-do of having a better option for that. No, do I not have? There. Right. Because, like, okay. Is it not smashing protector? Yeah, just find it next to better. Yeah. So, yeah, but ideally, and that's probably even more mainstream content, to actually benchmark this stuff and see how much performance we lose on those. So nice. So yeah, go pool number of tools, 2 books only. Debian is usually 3 speed actually itself. Single GPU pass. Like what? Single GPU pass through? What do you mean with single GPU pass through? You mean virtualization? Do you mean pathing? Please comment further of what exactly. Yeah. Happy that you enjoy these videos, and I hope you learned something. That's basically also it. Let's keep it short, then more people enjoy it, and share, like, and subscribe. I hope you learned something. The next interim, so probably I will also release this build as an interim test ISO for other people playing along at home. I will probably also use that as deployment for our own virtual machines to make sure I find the most bugs and everything is tested for the next big release to come in some month. But otherwise, even then, T2 trunk in an amazing shape, and after fixing nonsense like that, it is now working again. And that's it for today. I hope you learned something. See you soon, and otherwise have a good day or night. Take care.